Welcome to Questions from the Closet. I'm Charlie Bird.
And I'm Ben Shalati. Each episode, we discuss a question that we commonly get asked as LGBTQ plus Latter-day Saints.
We're not trying to answer this question or come to a consensus, but simply sharing our perspectives. Today's question is, what's it like to be LGBTQ plus at BYU Hawaii?
So Charlie and I are not terribly diverse, and we share many opinions and life experiences. For example, we are both out of town right now traveling.
However, there are some pretty big differences. For example, Ben is in Everett, Washington.
Correct.
You're home, right? And I am in Laie, Hawaii.
So nice. Charlie, what took you to Hawaii?
It is nice. You can see the palms behind me. What's that?
What took you to Hawaii?
Vacation. Just 2 years of grad school took me here. But yeah, I'm here with Ryan's family, and we've just been snorkeling and beaching and hiking. It's been awesome. It's been great.
Sounds super fun.
Are you visiting your parents?
I am. I am not jealous. I am in lovely Everett, Washington, which I describe as the Ogden of Washington. Which is either a great thing or a bad thing, depending on who you are. But it's great.
That's
I'm here spending a week with my dad. I've been visiting my mom every day, and honestly, I've been taking a nap every day. I was really exhausted when I got here. And it's wonderful to be here. Like, I love my family. It's so good to see them. Like, Shalatis are a hoot and a total blast. It's also been really sad because I see my mom all the time and she's just not doing great. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah. You know,
well, I'm glad you can at least be
videos,
with her.
Yeah, it's good to see her and like hold her hand and go on walks with her and stuff, but she just like doesn't understand anything. And we would always like dance with her. We'd make her dance, and you can find like some old dancing videos on my social media. But she like doesn't dance anymore. And I was like, let's dance, Mom, and she like couldn't figure it out. I was like, oh. So yeah, it's just hard to see the changes. So
that's tough. I'm sorry.
So sorry to be a downer, but you're in Hawaii. And
I was
really
like, cool. I feel bad. Like, I was swimming with a sea turtle today. Well, I'm glad you're home.
Yeah.
Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sound guy, Mike, because it has now been an hour and 20 minutes of us trying to figure out how to do this. But we finally got it. Hopefully the recording and the video and everything works. But we're excited for this episode. And we like to provide a variety of voices and perspectives. And today we're happy to be joined by ESA Wilson. And here he is.
I love that you guys are like sharing an earbud.
I know.
Old school.
I'm telling you, sound guy Mike really would have come in handy this time. But we got it rigged up. So
great. Well, Yessie, tell us a little about yourself.
All right. I just graduated from BYU Hawaii with a BFA in general music. I'm going to Arizona State University this fall to work on a master's in conducting, and I am a part of an all queer what was that called? Cohort. So 3 of the master's candidates are all queer, and then the one doctoral candidate is a trans woman, and then our professor that we're all sitting under, Dr. Saplan, identifies as Mahu. That's the Hawaiian term for queer. We can talk about that later. And so we're just going to kick down the door at Arizona State this fall.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Culture background: Samoan, Hawaiian, Filipino. Raised in Orange County, California, but I moved to Hawaii to reclaim that identity. And now I'm a big advocate for LGBTQ issues here at BYU Hawaii, as well as my culture.
And I will add that he's really nice. He gave me this lei, and this is my first one. It was like he very ceremoniously put it on my head, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he tried to grab it. Like, no, you got to receive the love.
I don't know the rules.
Yeah, see, I have a question that might be culturally insensitive. I just don't know what this is like. So, you know, as a white person,
what a great preface for a question, Ben. So this might be insensitive, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Well, so like, you know, if people were like, yeah, what's your background? Like, well, I'm English and German, and I'm a quarter Lebanese, but like none of those cultures like influenced my life at all, really. So my question here is like, what's it like to be multiracial in the U.S. and do any of those cultures like have more of an impact on like how you see yourself and how you view yourself?
That's that. Oh man. And on top of the ethnic cultures, we have the culture of being a member of this church, right? And so those all really mix together. And I've just been so blessed to be, God has given me a chance to tier the learning about those cultures. I grew up with my Samoan side in California, and my grandparents are from Samoa. And then I served my mission Samoan speaking in New Zealand, so I got to learn the language, and like that was cool. 2013, 2015, and then now, and my mom is Hawaiian Filipino, and so after that mission, I just felt the draw to come to Hawaii and reclaim my Hawaiian side, and so I got to move here and learn more about the culture there here in Hawaii, and then God brought me to BYU Hawaii, and all my roommates have been like Filipino, so I've been learning more about that culture, and so it's not an insensitive question, but it adds some added complexity, especially if you go to Samoa or a Samoan ward, for example. I'll just talk about those. We have added cultural rules that are added on top of the cultural things that we see in church. And so like there's a bunch of different things that happen. So that I'll just leave it at a cliffhanger there. What else do you want to
ask? Okay. So it sounds like Wilson is a Samoan last name.
Yes, it's totally Samoan last name. Actually, our triple great grandpa named Mangus landed a boat in Samoa. And so everybody after that was Samoan blood, but the Wilson name carried on. My middle name is also Purcell, which is also a very common Samoan name. So we have Scotch-Irish in there too.
So, Yessi, you said that God brought you to BYU Hawaii. Tell us about like how you got to BYU Hawaii and what it was like when you arrived.
When I got to, I never wanted to go to a church school. I grew up in a non-LDS environment in Southern California, and like the last thing I wanted to do, and this is just me being me. I'm just not about I just couldn't imagine being a really Mormon-y society. But I love my faith. But some cultural things, I just couldn't imagine myself being here. But one of the aunties in Hilo, Hawaii, suggested I get in, and she helped me apply, and I got in here. And when I came here, it was a time for me to explore myself. And when I went back in the summer, I came out to my friends and family. I'm one of those rare people that God kind of grabbed me by the lapels and like, it's time for you to come out to your family, and I need you to take care of your LGBTQ brothers and sisters at BYU Hawaii. And that landed like a ton of bricks, because and then this is what I do to God. I'm like, this goes against everything that I've studied. Because remember, I did the whole 2-year mission to try to study away the gate, and you didn't take it away, and so now you're telling me that I should like take care of my LGBTQ brothers and sisters and come out to my family. This is insane. And so I grabbed my patriarchal blessing to try to prove God wrong. And then the veil was lifted on this one section that talked about my mission. A fun fact about my mission is I was that missionary that everybody hated. I was in Samoa, we'd say Fia Poko. I was kind of like a smart aleck. I thought I knew everything. And
I totally relate.
I was
to that.
not. No,
you been
overly obedient. Just anyway, I was not. I would not have liked to serve under me. But so the section that talked in my patriarchal blessing about my mission, it's like, oh, you're going to be so good at loving people, and you're going to speak the language fluently, and you're going to be a great teacher. I was not any of those things on my mission. And then the veil was lifted, like, oh, those are the gifts that are going to come to me as I minister to my brothers and sisters at BYU Hawaii. And that has been the case as I gave it a talk here at a ward, and then next thing you know, just I shared what it's like to be LGBT, to be gay in the church, and then people just start coming up to me, and next thing you know, over the next 2.5, almost 3 years now, I've just probably talked to about 200 different LGBTQ individuals from all across the universe, the world, it has opened my mind and helped me realize, like, holy cow, there's so much that we don't know about what it's like to be gay in the church and in other countries. And so that's something that I brought to the attention of our university president.
Yeah. So it sounds like for a long time, your orientation was something that you were like pushing away, or like felt like a wedge between you and God. But by accepting it, it actually gave you a lot of opportunities to serve.
Yeah, it's present nonsense. Whom God calls, God qualifies. And so if God gave me the green light, then I'm going for this. Even though, like, it kind of like I had a religion professor say, like, the rule of polygamy is it's okay when God says it's okay. And that's such a really good rule to explain why it's on and off at certain times. And so in my mind, like, gay has always been off. But if God's telling me in a prayer, hey, I need you to do this. And then things start happening, like having like 5 closeted roommates in about 5 different units. Like, and then people come out to me like, oh, this is, and we've had powerful spiritual conversations, and many of these people will never come out probably in their lifetimes because their country culture won't allow it. And so, yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this. Is that answering?
No, I think that's an awesome insight into what this was like for you. I'm wondering like how you, if that ever toggles still, let's see, like is there still ever this like kind of worry that you're on the right path now?
Especially now that I'm going to Arizona State, and I now need to look at because I came out while I was here at BYU Hawaii, and I went straight out of coming out into advocating for us at BYU Hawaii. Now I need to see who is Yesa in the context of being in Arizona and away from a strong LDS environment. And I'm really big right now on the concept of just rethinking a lot of things. I do plan on holding on to my faith and hopefully working with connections with Ben, with people in the church out there in Arizona. But
so many great people in Arizona.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm asking because this happens to me often, but a lot of people I've talked to, it's like they felt this push to come out and to accept this part of them, but then there's always still, I at least for me, I was raised in a very like I hated this part of myself for so long, and then all of a sudden, like that radical acceptance of it, like there's still moments when I'm like, it. Does that make sense, Ben? What am I trying to say?
What you're trying to say is, are you asking if you like got to a point where like, okay, everything is good and it's good forever, and do you ever get to a point where like, okay, well actually I'm still questioning what I thought I knew?
I'm asking how do you hold on to that revelation from God?
Yeah,
when your whole history pushed against it. Because like there's that whole chunk of your life where it's just like no, and then God tells you yes, and you're like okay, but it's got to still feel like a lot of that history is pushing against it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the phrase I use with my family is I call it following the revelation breadcrumbs. There are just assurances that keep on happening, like the fact that you showed up in Hawaii at this time that I just graduated, and possibly been later on this year. Like it's kind of bizarre that these things, these assurances keep on happening, or something will happen with some kind of drama in the church will happen with LGBTQ individuals, like honor code or like something said in general conference, and these things keep happening and situations keep happening, and I go into action. I go on comforting these people, and I just keep on feeling the Spirit strongly that this is right. And so if I'm going to be honest, as far as a ministering perspective, I feel so strong about it. But who am I as far as that? Does that revelation continue for will God let me date when I go to Arizona State? I want to. I'm going to probably explore that and see if I what that brings, and I'll make a decision then. But we will, we'll just hit the refresh button then, and we'll see what God's saying then. Just follow the revelation breadcrumbs. If they halt, then that's a no. But if they keep going, then we'll just keep following.
I like that, the breadcrumbs. Yeah. That's cool.
But I love this idea of like line upon line, and okay, I'm going to take the next step and follow these breadcrumbs. I would warn you against seeing Charlie and me as like answers to prayers, but very kind of you to say that.
Oh my God, I'm just on vacation. So let's go back to that moment when you feel this charge to like almost, you were talking about it as if it sounded like a second mission, like the second like phase of ministering. Where did you start?
Where did I start? It honestly, it is right after I was like on break after my first semester here, and God's like, come out, take care of your LGBT brothers and sisters. The fall semester hits. And one of my roommates was reacting to something that a certain apostle said when they came here, and it was kind of insensitive towards LGBTQ individuals. And we just had a deep discussion. Eventually, roommate comes out to me, and I'm like, wow, God, are we starting now? And then like, oh wow, I should probably do a talk about this. And so I came out to my family first, and when I visited them in California, and then once I took that talk, gave that talk, then that's when I just started getting flooded with people, and that's when the ministry just started rolling itself. It's just me and posting stuff that you and Charlie and Ben posted. I post those things, the more people start reaching out, and so it's just like a ball going downhill. I'm not pushing anything other than like asking to do a fireside over here, but that's other than that, it just rolls on its own.
It reminds me of Doctrine and Covenants section 4, where it talks about the field being white and ready to harvest, and if you have desires to serve God, you're called to the work. And I feel that there are so many people in this space, and we need each other, and like all of us, like we're ripe for ministering, and we need more connection and community in this space, and it's really beautiful that you felt a call to step into the space, and then you went with that, and then all of a sudden, like, you had work to do.
And I think it's a work that we're all doing. The way I would describe it is like, if we look at a field, it's like if we look at the whole church as this gigantic field, there's this section of LGBTQ people that's just like, oh yeah, we just let the litter gather over there. We won't actually fix up that section yet. But now I feel like we're all called to tend this part of the vineyard that we've been neglecting, and that is our LGBTQ brothers and sisters. And for me, that's been a lot of international students. That's like kind of a unique color that I bring to the vineyard, but that's how I envision it. It's just, we're all called to the vineyard, but right now we're drawing attention to a different side of the vineyard that our brothers and sisters who are members of church, they want to serve. We've been taught to be loving and caring. I just don't think they understand our stories well enough to know how to minister to that side of the vineyard and to have those tools.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Yeah. So tell us about working with these closeted roommates you talked about and other LGBTQ students.
Oh my gosh, lots of just holding and crying and people not knowing how to articulate these things. Like take a student from Indonesia, for example, coming from an Islamic nation, and now coming to America and actually coming to terms like, oh, I may fit under this gay label, and not knowing how to talk about this. So that's one example. Another thing that I hear, this is very common about Southeast Asians, particularly I'll talk a lot about the students in the Philippines. What people don't understand about BYU Hawaii is we have what's known as the iWork scholarship for these international students to come here and have a very, very subsidized education that is really beautiful, and they just got to return to their countries and make a difference over there. And it's such a beautiful system. And what happens is let's imagine somebody out in Nowheresville of Philippines in a little village, and they're the first student or first child to get a collegiate education. They're going to America. They're members of the church. Just what is the expectation for that person when they come back, other than what good they're going to do with their education? In the church, there is an absolute expectation for these international students to come back. You are going to be a bishop, stake president, relief society president. This is just how things are. There's that expectation, and these students feel that. And so, and while they're in America and they're dealing with these feelings now, they don't want to disappoint these families, because now it's not just coming out to your families and your family's not disappointing you. Now there's a higher expectation to be a church leader, which is why they're always being asked to get married, because you need to become one of those church leaders. And that's a higher fall from grace for them. And then if they do come out, it's in some situations the parents will love them, and my family will love us. But what will happen to my family if I come out? Then all of a sudden the culture of that is just going to eat up that family. Like, oh, your child went to America and look what happened to them, and they don't want to put their families through that. So I hear stories like that so often that just absolutely break my heart. Sorry if this is getting too deep for.
No, that it's like heartbreaking and fascinating. Like, I've never considered any of those things before. And like, I almost want to like replay what you just said right now so I can listen to it again and just let it sink in, like all of the additional factors that are at play for an international, basically for someone who's like not white and gay, right? or American and gay,
which
like,
is a majority of our church, right? More than half of us are outside of the U.S. And like the work that we've been working on so far, especially you two, is not any fault of your own. Is we're starting where we're at, yeah.
right.
But like what I stumbled across here, or what God called me to here, is a realization like, oh, that's right, we're a worldwide church, and we are ahead, so far ahead with what we're doing here. Actually, I'm not saying we're not ahead. We are making up for some tough times in the church here, but we can get ahead in all these other countries. And so my dream here, as I work with the BYH presidency and just talking to these students, I have friends from my friend Dehonti from Guatemala, my friend Terrell from Malaysia. Let me just stick with those two, because they interacted with me and they've asked these hard questions, and they understand where I'm coming from. When they become a bishop or a stake president or whatever, and they have a gay child come to them, or youth or member, they'll know what to do, and they'll be able to hold their wards and stakes accountable because they know. And then all of a sudden we can get these wards and stakes to be safe havens for LGBTQ individuals, possibly, if we can just get these international students to interact with us and know our stories. It's a really, really beautiful vision that I think matches with what BYU Hawaii was built for. And David O. McKay's vision for us was that students will go abroad and they will be peace builders among the nations. And I can totally see that happening as we start incorporating that missing part of the vineyard.
Yeah. So yes, as you were talking, so these students you mentioned, they're straight students from other countries that aren't as affirming as a place like BYU Hawaii would be to LGBTQ folks. And so you're saying is, as they interact with you and with other LGBTQ students there, they're going to take what they learn back to their home countries and hopefully create an environment of love and kindness, similar to what might be in Western countries where it's more accepted.
Absolutely.
We're talking about these students from places where, like, okay, they're from a Muslim country, so it's not okay to be out and gay there. What do these students need? You know, what do they need on their journeys coming from places where it's not okay to be LGBTQ?
What a fantastic question. What they need while they're here is to know that they're not broken, and everything that all three of us say is, and they need to know that they're beautiful children of God, and that having either identifying as on any part of the queer spectrum isn't a hindrance, but it could actually increase their discipleship and their ability to serve their communities. I'm studying to be a conductor. Like, my gay side is a part of my expressive side, you know, like it's all encompassing. And so I think what they need here, like everybody else, is it's not a different answer, is they need that same validation. But I guess going back to their countries, we need a whole systematic change over there, that none of us have the power to do individually, but which is why I work with my ministry, as I'm comforting people, has really been focused on, like, well, let's train up all the straight people over here so we can start like hammering away at that.
I love that you said that your ministry has often looked like holding people, and just like letting them be who they are, where they're at, and making that spot safe. I mean, I feel like this conversation is incredibly eye-opening for me. Thank you for sharing. But for me, I just think of how overwhelmed I have felt, and I do feel still, as I grow and progress and learn more. Like, it can be very overwhelming to be a gay member of the church. And now just think, like, having exposure to these other facets that come into play. I can't imagine how overwhelming that could be. And so just hold someone in that space and like help them feel okay. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I love that word you used. It was very profound, I think.
As you guys were talking, I was thinking about the hymn, Because I Have Been Given Much, and just thinking about, you know, my privilege. You know, I can be openly gay at BYU, and it's great. And my family says, you know, whatever you choose is fine. and I have all these options and all this privilege, and because I've been given so many opportunities, what can I do to reach out to people and like you, Yesy, hold people and be with them and hopefully educate people so that when they go back to where they're to their home, it's a place where they can be just as loved as they are, being held by you.
I think something that, let me just give some credit to somebody who does that well, who has hugged me a couple times, and that is our president at BYU Hawaii, President Keone Kawe. He is always the first to say, yes, I love you. And he's told me that before, like, the university president but then when I just graduated, when you shake their hands, you go down like, congratulations, congratulations. When the president grabs me and gives me a bear hug and says, yes, sir, calls me by name, thank you. I love you so much. Thank you for all the work that you've done here. That means the world to me and it didn't take much, for a member of the church. Fortunately, he's the president of the university, but just to know that I'm loved here, and every time he's ever been asked a question by some students here, he'll do what are called talk story sessions, and students, he'll just sit in front of all these students, and they'll just raise their hands and ask questions. And one of the students, my good friend Brandon, was like, "Is there a place for LGBTQ individuals here?" And he says, "I love each of my students that are here. You do belong here." Things like that is what members are doing for me here and the rest of us. I don't know if that's a weird tangent to shoot off into, but that's one of the things that where my brain went from what you said.
Well, I think it's beautiful though, because there's this part of us, and maybe I should speak from an I perspective, like hearing that, I just was reflecting on how there's this part of me that I hated for so long and that was only fed hate for so long. And then there was this moment when I was just like, maybe someone can love me in spite of this. But it sounds like what you're saying is this person that you care about and who is important loves you not in spite of it, just like because of it almost, and just and like sees the whole you and loves you and like offers love to that place that never received any for so long. And I think that's such an important thing to know, like if you're looking to be an ally in the space, how important it is to like care for that part of the vineyard, right? Like that part of someone's soul who has only been fed hatred and from either a culture or a community, or most often probably from themselves, to take that and give it the tenderness and care that it never received.
I think Ben knows where I'm going to go with this, because when we're talking about being fed hate culturally, one of the things I haven't addressed yet, I mentioned the director I'll be studying under identifies as the Hawaiian word mahu. And let me introduce you folks to three words. One's Hawaiian, one's Samoan, and one's Tongan. Mahu is the Hawaiian word for somebody who identifies as being queer or third gender, a third gender that embodies male and female characteristics. In Samoan, it's the fa'afafine, and in Tongan, it's the whakaleti. And so what's interesting and to me and really validating to me is that let me just talk through the Hawaiian lens. The mahu today, modernly, has been used as an insult, like, oh, look at that mahu over there. And like, it's just insulting, right? Just how queer used to be a bad word. But then as we've done more research into this, being mahu, or the mahu individuals way back when were healers. They were the storytellers. They had a valued part of society. Chiefs would actually have, some of them would have male partners. They're called aikane. Kikamemeha III had an aikane partner that after they came together, he made that aikane a co-ruler. But due to Calvinist Christianity, like this can't happen, right? And so I want to say it was one of the leaders in Kauai found out that this was happening and planned an assassination, started beating up this aikane of Kikamemeha the third, and then that freaked him out and he had to leave. And so anyway, that's just a little part of the Hawaiian. The reason why I bring this up of why that's so important to me is me being gay, which is on the spectrum being mahu, and queer, is actually genetic for me. It's in my genes, and it's in my Samoan side as well. Now Samoans, if you see a man that's dressed as a woman, and this also happens in Hawaii, is sometimes they're just born more effeminate, and we can see that here in America. But in Samoa, it's all about labor divisions and how you do work. And so if you have all sons, and you need somebody to do women's work, sometimes the parents will designate a child like, we're going to start dressing you up like a girl because we need somebody to do this for our family. But then there are some that are more effeminate, and then they start doing those chores naturally, and because they identify that way. So in Samoa and in Tonga, those are very similar. These individuals are functioning in society as being that kind of like a third gender over there. However, they can never be in a relationship. They can embrace that side of themselves, but and you can watch documentaries on this about how, like, with I'm not sorry, this is gonna sound like I'm targeting Christianity. I'm just talking about the realities of what it's like over there. But um, they'll get called out by pastors and things like that, but they're just trying to live their lives. So here in America and in westernized countries, when these islanders move out, now they have a chance to possibly explore relationships. But if any of them here, for example, at BYU Hawaii, if they are going back to those islands, that can't happen. So it's kind of this really interesting situation of being like exposed to, hey, you can have this, but when you go back to that, no, you can't have that, because as a whole country, as a whole culture of a country, that can't happen. So you can be Fa'afafine, Mahu, or Fakaleti, but none of this whole like actually getting in a relationship kind of a thing. So there's
That's
added
how it
complexity.
is now, or that's how it used to be?
That is how it is now.
Okay.
Hawaii has gotten better, but definitely Samoa and Tonga are not places that you could be in an openly gay relationship. Yeah, it's kind of messy, right?
And yet at the same time, in these cultures, in Samoa and Tonga and Hawaii, it would be acceptable to be Mahu or Fa'afine. I'm so sorry about my pronunciation.
Yeah. That's terrific.
As long as you're not in a relationship.
Absolutely. And you know what's so funny? This is what, let me tell you, let's do an uptick here. When I was doing my mission in New Zealand, what shocked me was I was in Auckland, New Zealand. I was in South Auckland, Samoan wards, and every member's house I went to, they have a stack of DVDs of Fa'afafine pageants, of them just like going all flashy, all the dancing, all this, just letting it out. And so they accept them as a form of entertainment, and everybody loves it. But the whole relationship side just doesn't exist. But when you talk to them, my gosh, some of the most spiritual people you'll ever meet. No shocker there for us, but like they are some of my heroes when I hear their stories.
Where could somebody go to learn more about this?
Google.
Like, just Google it.
I am not a professional. I'm not. But these are just things that I've come across.
Well, that's fascinating, the story of like the ruler with his partner, and that's just, I never heard that. That'd be interesting to read up more on.
Yeah, I wish I had more for you folks.
You've got a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, and Yessi, what has it done for you to like realize like the Polynesian heritage of like of these different identities, and like what has that been like for you?
It's funny is because I grew up here in America, I think Westernly, which is why I'm so passionate about studying it, and why my brain holds all these fun facts for me to spurt out at you folks. I identify as being gay right now. I feel like that's a label that fits best. But as of right now, I'm not. It doesn't impact me too much. But because of the situation of so many people here at BYU Hawaii, I had to become more aware and have more conversations to learn, which is how I learned a lot of this.
Jesse, thank you for sharing all that with us. It's fascinating things that I'm learning about, and thank you for sharing with the listener as well. Talk to us a little bit about your relationship with the president of the university, and how you got to a point where he knew your name and hugged you, and just tell us more about your experience with the administration.
Thank you for asking that. I found a way, I can't say how, to just send a message to President Kawa like, hey, I'm like you, I'm Hawaiian, and I grew up in the mainland, and I lived in Hawaii, and I'm also LGBTQ, gay, but I use that whole acronym. And I'd love to let you know what your students are going through. He just stepped in as the new president of the university. And so I'm thinking like, I got to get my foot in the door now while he still wants while he's gung ho about serving the students. And he's like, sure, I'd love to meet you. Can my vice president come? I'm like, sure, bring brother Cal. And then we had a Zoom meeting together back in the heavy COVID days. And I read to him a document. Let me pull it up on my phone.
A document that you wrote?
Yeah, a document that I wrote. It's called Stories from BYUH's Closet. And this wasn't a study. This is just me going off of memory of all these people I met. I gave him about 27 different names, or not names. Sorry, I didn't give names. I gave like a starting initial, what their gender was, where they're from, and how they identified. And I just gave them stories, and I didn't tell them what to do. I told them, I trust that you will know what to do just from hearing these stories. And they read every single one of them.
I love that. Can you share some of them?
Oh, gosh.
Here? Is that?
Yeah. Well, we'll put a trigger warning here for some people. I mentioned some of these with Papa Oster, but let me go through a couple of them. There's a male who's from Fiji who identifies as gay, who was a convert and was advised by stake leadership to marry a woman, divorce her, and ran away with what would later be an abusive boyfriend. He's since returned to the church, but not without being shamed by his local church leadership. I have a friend from Hong Kong who identified as questioning at the time, was a failed abortion by a mother who didn't want him and was ping pong back and forth between her and her homeless drunk husband. He found the church and served a mission, but has same-sex attraction and now wonders if the church is even a place for him now. Is now chasing after being rich and is as his only hope of being happy in life. We'll skip over some of the rape ones. The ones I talked about with the Filipinos and Thai people of not being able to return home is a very common one. We have, let's see here. Yeah, this one says, these are two different Filipino males. Both are being pressured by their family to marry while the parents consciously suppress their authentic feminine sides of themselves. They discourage them acting that way. And they each want to be loved but are aware they will return to the Philippines and must take on high leadership callings as is expected in their local culture after returning home with a degree from a CES institution. Both are contemplating moving away from their families to mainly avoid the shaming that will come to their families for having gay sons. And that's something that I failed to mention, is the need to escape. And so I can't speak for all of Asia and Polynesia, but a lot of us have what I call village mentalities, which is very different from how we're raised in America. In America, it's like you do you, and you make your chase after the American dream. But for a lot of us, it's like, no, you don't leave this family. Nobody's kicking you out of the family. You actually don't ever leave us. And so this concept of running away from a family to try to figure yourself out, culturally, a lot of us aren't built to do that unless you're being sent away to work in a richer area and send money back to the country. So that's hard for a lot of them. And I can go into more about it. Let me just say something that I've not shared ever before. At the top of this document, the day I was meeting President Callaway, this phrase came to my mind, and I said, each of these individuals have fought, and many continue to fight like lions to stay in the faith. But even lions can't fight forever without nourishment and without a pride to support them.
That's so beautiful.
Wow. Yeah. If anyone's like me, I'm just thinking like, man, I want to help, right? Like I gotta help these people because they're children of God and they're hurting. And like I know I have such a strong testimony. Like you were saying before, that like the field is white and ready to harvest. Like there are people to help, and that there's work to be done, and that God sees these people and will inspire you to know how to help. Wherever you are, whoever you are, if you have a sincere desire to lift God's LGBTQ children, you will receive revelation. Like the Spirit will speak to your soul quickly because there's work to be done. and I'm grateful for that, and I'm like feeling slightly overwhelmed. Like I'm learning a lot of things that I didn't know before. But I just like God is in this. God is in this work. I love how you said that in this meeting with the president of the university, you shared the stories but didn't tell him what to do. I think that's incredibly powerful, because that's where like personal revelation kicks in. You know, like you see the problem, you feel you have this desire to help, but God is going to tell each individual what to do, when, and how, and where.
Yeah. And this is the drum that I beat all the time of building Zion, and we build Zion by letting people into our hearts and minds. And you gave the vice president of BYU Hawaii, access to hearts and minds, and then personal revelation could talk to them and their stewardship to help them know what to do. And just like Charlie, I'm feeling like oh my gosh, what can I do? And it feels really heavy to how do you change the culture of a family in the Philippines? I don't know how to do that. But I think that the answer to all of this is building Zion by knitting our hearts together and sharing stories. And thank you for elevating the voices of your friends there.
I have a lot of faith in the membership of this church, because I believe in what we have been taught here. If Jesus Christ is really at the head of this church, and Heavenly Father really is a loving Heavenly Father that will give revelation, we merely just need to be able to amplify these stories. And I believe and I trust the membership and President Kawe that those natural instincts of all that we've been taught our lives will kick in once they get it, once they understand that this is not a choice. And that's what I've been doing most of the time here at BYU Hawaii when work with straight individuals, is just giving them that base structure. And then now that you understand where we're coming from, you just ask God, you're going to know what to do.
Yeah. Everyone has the tools to help.
Yeah.
They just might not know where to use them.
And you don't need to understand what's going on.
Almost every time I give a fireside, I quote President Ballard from a talk he gave in 2014, where he says that the experience of same-sex attraction is a complex reality for many people. The attraction itself is not a sin, but acting on it is. Even though individuals do not choose to have such attractions, they do choose how to respond to them. With love and understanding, the church reaches out to all of God's children, including those with same-sex attraction. And then we go through like the important points he says there. Are those principles that people in Southeast Asia, like members of the church in Southeast Asia and in Polynesia, understand that this is a complex reality? It's not a choice. And as a church, we should be reaching out with love and understanding to people with same-sex attraction?
I can get really in big trouble for saying this, but because that's a very fair question. But if I were to answer honestly from the stories I know and from my own experience of being with Samoans and Tongans and being Samoan Hawaiian, I just don't think they're there yet. But that's the exciting part, is they can be there if we can get the future leaders of those countries here at BYU Hawaii to engage with us, and they can get there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it sounds like, thank you for your honesty. It sounds like, Elder Ballard was saying, back in 2014, something that a lot of church members haven't understood yet. And honestly, I'm not sure I even understood in 2014 either. I was still, battling my own demons back then as well. And, I think that if we could just help people understand what the church is currently teaching, and also sharing our hearts with people, we would be in a much better place.
I think the root of this, and I think like Papa Oster is onto the same theory that I'm onto, is that this is a bigger issue than just LGBTQ. I think the issue is culture. There are things that we just do culturally, and I've seen Elder Bednar. This is what got me on this whole thing to try to fix culture. Is Elder Bednar came over to our mission, and he's like, "How many of you have ever heard somebody say, wait, what is the phrase? We thank the priesthood for reverently passing the sacrament and invite them to be seated." And we all raised our hands. Yeah, I've heard that. He's like, that was spreading false doctrine. And we all like, whoa, wait, what? Where? He's like, let me say it again. We thank the priesthood for reverently passing the sacrament. Do you see the issue? Is we're calling the men the priesthood. Men are not the priesthood. We can hold the priesthood, but this is something that has culturally been spread around and everybody's using. And now people don't, like, now a lot of the women in the church think that men are actually the priesthood. And so that keeps it cycling. And so I see apostles like Elder Bednar, for example, just and you can hear in his talks is he's like, let me try to fix this cultural error. And if you look at the New Testament after the Gospels, the apostles are going around everywhere like, let's fix this cultural error, let's fix this cultural error. And so the things that need to be swept up is actually bigger than the LGBTQ community. We need to start holding ourselves to doctrine and stop with all these extra cultural things that are out there, and that a lot of that does come from from our own ethnic cultures. Like, for example, in Samoan culture, in New Zealand, where it's colder, you weren't allowed to pass the sacrament unless you wore a suit coat. Where does that come from? I don't know. And so I think one of the ways that we start chipping away at this is as members of the church start looking at the things that we do and like, is this doctrinal or is this cultural? Or is this a policy thing? That sometimes that helps me. Those are 3 boxes. But the starting place is this thing that I'm doing or how I treat people, is this rooted in doctrine, or is this rooted in culture, either from this culture that's been spread around the church or culture that comes from my ethnic background?
And I mean, again, I feel like this feels overwhelming, but at the same time, it makes sense because you just like spoke so eloquently to the fact that so many of these LGBTQ individuals are strong souls who are fighting for their faith. Like, we fight for our faith to hold on to it because sometimes it feels like everything in the world is like pushing us away from it. And that's not to discount the faith work that anyone else does, but it's there's like weird nuance and intricacies to being a gay member of the church. And of course, the adversary would want us to be confused about our identity, about who we are, about how we fit. And of course, there would be so many cultural and personal and like all of these factors that like just create little lies away from God's gay children knowing who they are and feeling that they can root themselves in the love of their Savior and the love of their family. And like the way just the way to fix that is to listen to the Spirit, to like root ourselves in the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and just going back to that phrase that the Yetse wrote of, we fight like lions, but even lions can't fight forever and need to be nourished.
Mm-hmm.
And just this idea that, as we work on, focusing on the doctrine of Christ and the core teachings of the church and not so much on culture, like we'll be guided to know how to nourish people. And
yeah,
I think that's a beautiful thing that people won't have to fight on their own. But this is something we can all link arms and do together.
For sure. I did have another thought too, arguably less profound. I was just gonna note, Ben, that you can quote from memory an obscure quote from Elder Ballard from 2014, but you still don't know the outro of our podcast.
So that is true. And I just need to sit down and memorize it someday.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, my bad.
The Spirit still hasn't consecrated the outro yet.
Oh, it's so long. Anyway.
It's just long because we're trying to cover our bases. We're like, listen to other people. Yeah. It's not just us. We're not telling anyone what to do. We reserve the right to change our minds. Please listen to other people.
But also follow us on YouTube.
And check out our Instagram.
Actually, on that thought, I've been thinking of, I would love your thoughts on this. Another turn. I've been thinking a lot about the 11th article of faith lately. Mm-hmm. And that is, which I'll read is, oh, do you know it already?
Yeah, I know.
Go for it.
It's, we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience and allow all men the same privilege. Let them worship how, where, or what they may.
I just quoted that to an atheist last week who heard my story, and he's like, wow, that is so inclusive. And he was blown away by it. I'm like, yeah, but we could do a better job of following it. I think if we're looking contextually, Joe Smith is talking about other religions, but what if we did that within the church and let me take care, be in charge of my repentance process, and maybe this is too aggressive, but why don't we just let people govern themselves according to the dictates of their own conscience. Let them worship how or what they may. Let them bring their gay spouse to church, and let them, and if they want to go through the church discipline, let them choose that. Like I've just, it's been on my mind a lot lately as I've been ready to transition and to not, without that kind of transition to ASU to the mainland. Yeah. Yeah, just a thought that I throw out there.
That's a good thought. Thanks.
Yes, I have a leading question for you. And it's, how have you experienced God's love while a student at BYU Hawaii?
Well, Ben, like you and Charlie, I can't hear these stories without some higher power support. The stuff that I've heard, it has broken me time and time again, but I just keep getting pieced together and ready to take on another story. And that every time it starts getting bad, God gives me more help, whether it be from the presidency or Charlie visiting Hawaii. It's just kind of funny how that's how it's been happening, Ben. Revelation breadcrumbs, he just drops them, and I'm ready to go for another round.
It's the nourishment.
Could you?
Yeah,
You're a lion. You get some food. You're ready to keep fighting.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what that's like? To, like, hear a story, feel broken, and then like to have God piece you back together. Like talk to us about what that feels like, or what that looks like.
It looks like hearing a girl who's triggered by a gay woman who is triggered by dogs because she was sexually abused as a child by a person who had a dog, and so that's why she's afraid of dogs. That's me hearing that on a Friday, and then Saturday I have to teach a Sunday school lesson, and the lesson has everything that I need to recover. And then I have to stand in front of people, and I love asking open-ended questions like, "Can you help me with this?" And things that people say in Sunday school help me to affirm what I'm going through and help me find some answers. That's one of many ways that it happens. It's not always so immediate. Sometimes God lets me sit with it and think about it, but that's one scenario.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. You know, I'm thinking about a listener who's like, I want to be involved, like Yeti is. Like, I want to do these cool things. I want to talk to the university president, and I want to collect stories and share stories. What would you say to someone who's like, I really want to help?
It seems I've heard some of your recent podcasts is you folks are on the same train of thought as I am, is the concept of deliverance. Is we're all waiting on deliverance. Like, hopefully something comes soon. I don't know what it's going to look like, but we are all members of this church, and we all have the right to fix the culture. We can't all change doctrines and policies, and it is okay to speak up to our local leaders in a loving way. And like I've said this not here, but when I came out, like my dad tried to fix me a few times. We've had a couple arguments. We have a stronger relationship than ever before. But like I realized I knew I was different / gay since I was like 10. So I had like 15 years of being homophobic. And so I ought to give like my parents 15 years to like, because they can't be any more homophobic than I was to myself. And so like, but with that same grace, we need to offer that same patience when talking to our leaders, that we don't need, like, have the courage. Oh, let me say this. Have the courage to get in the room and have the conversation. I heard from a Hawaiian activist that, you know, when we're waving signs and things like that, it's too late. And that's not to say that waving signs is bad, but have we done our best to get in the room first, to have dialogues with people? And are we in the right frame of mind to have a mature conversation? And especially in the church and at church schools, we need to be able to hold a conversation through the lens of the church with language that a lot of them will understand. Once we start dabbling a little bit too much on the political side, we lose them, especially if they're a little bit more conservative in the church. So I think that's one of the things that we really need to do, is do whatever we can to get in the rooms and have faith that God will put words in our mouth like he did Moses.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It really is. And it reminds me of, I mean, I just finished a social work program and we had a lot of policy classes and advocacy courses. And so many of the principles are things you're saying, and they're things that I try to do in my life. Like if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling bitter, vindictive, I say, okay, what in this could I, like I'm going to hold that emotion, I'm going to recognize, but with that power, am I going to move closer to someone or put distance, right? If I have a goal, if I want to talk to someone, where are they coming from? How can I meet them where they're at and then show them where I'm at? And those are amazing principles. I like it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they're grounded in
Yeah.
research. Yes.
Yeah. As you guys were both talking, I've been thinking about, the work I did when I was living in Tucson and how fun and great that was. And now, what I get to do in Utah, which I love as well. And yet you're super far away from all the places I've been, like being called to do something really, really cool. And I'm just like so grateful for the work you're doing. And you just like came out of nowhere, it's like you felt called to do something and you did something. And so, going back to this original question of, what's it like to be LGBTQ plus at BYU Hawaii? And I guess, the question could be broader, like what's it like to be LGBTQ plus, anywhere in the world. And the feeling I'm getting is God is going to call someone to take care of you and to help you. And maybe God is going to call you to help someone and take care of someone too. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
God is going to call you to fight like a lion for someone else and to help build a pride. And just this idea that we're not in this alone, and that people are going to just like pop out of nowhere as they're called to do it, and things are just going to work out the way they're supposed to. And I hope that people feel that in the end we're not going to have to be alone.
I'm just very grateful for God pulling me to BYU Hawaii, because this is such a special university. And apostles have said that there have been more prophecies about this university than any other church universities, and there's a lot. And with this beautiful diversity of not just ethnicity, we've all had to adjust to being in a totally different environment. Local people from Hawaii, this is not like normal Hawaii here in Laie. And then we'll like our population is 63% international. So if somebody comes from Nowheresville, Kentucky, and comes over here, and they've only been surrounded by one or two ethnicities, there's an adjustment that needs to be made here. And oh, is this what it feels like to be in a minority? Like, yes, it does. That's exactly what it feels like. And so everybody here at BYU Hawaii has this beautiful situation where we've had to all learn how to adjust and build Zion and share the commonality that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that has been enough for our university. And we continue to make these connections, and it's on that foundation that I've been able to build this ministry here that I know many others will now continue forward. It couldn't have happened anywhere else than here at BYU Hawaii, in this beautiful, diverse place that has been consecrated by our Heavenly Father.
Love that.
Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your knowledge and your experience and just your goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking this time. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have enjoyed this or other episodes, please consider leaving a review, following us on Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook at Questions from the Closet, or sharing this podcast with someone you love. And as always, please remember that we do not represent the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Brigham Young University, Hawaii, or otherwise. We are not trying to be prescriptive or tell anyone what to think or what to do.
You heard 3 perspectives, and there are many, many more. We encourage you to listen to other voices and hear a wide variety of experiences. If you would like to submit a question or share a comment about today's episode, you can email us at questionsfromthecloset@gmail.com.
Until next time.